Oh, hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to EFC's Book Chat. We are on Book Chat 9 of Don Miguel Ruiz's 4 Agreements. I read this book every other day, talk about some of my insights and the EF relevance that the book has. Every book that I pick generally has some relevance to executive functions I think is important. So if you're tuning in for that, then cool, awesome. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section. If you just find what I say helpful in general, let me know down below in the comment section below as well. If you like what I talk about, like and subscribe, and let's go ahead and jump into it. So, chapter 6 is essentially about breaking old habits or old agreements, and Don Miguel Ruiz brings up 3 different ways to do that. So the first way is called the art of transformation, the dream of the second attention. The second one is called the discipline of the warrior, controlling your own behavior. And the last one is called Initiation of the Dead, Embracing the Angel of Death. And we're going to actually talk about each one of these. So let's go ahead and talk about the first one, which is the art of transformation, the dream of the second attention. Let's go ahead and jump into it. Okay, so what is this first solution about, right? So during the last couple of chapters, I talked about this dynamic between the judge and the victim and how the judge and victim are really parasites in our minds. They're really parasites that feed on all the emotional toxins that we create based off of the old agreements that we have within ourselves. And what this solution is that Ruiz talks about is recognizing each one of these bad agreements that we have within ourselves and working on rectifying them and replacing them with good agreements that make sense. And it's really important that it's a replacement. Ruiz talks about how we can't just say, hey, bad agreement, get out of here, and not replace that bad agreement with something else. And the reason for that is that if we just say, hey, let's get rid of this bad agreement that we have with ourselves, and we don't replace it with something that, is similar but in a better light, what's going to happen is that that bad agreement is just going to reinfect our habits, etc. And the way that he kind of metaphorically talks about this is that we all have demons within ourselves, and the only way for the demons to be fended off is by putting an angel there to defend that habit that we're trying to create. So I hope that makes sense, and I think he really emphasizes as well on, I believe, page 110. So on page 110 he says, we need the same amount of power to change an agreement. We cannot change an agreement with less power than we used to make the agreement, and almost all our personal power is invested in keeping the agreement we have with ourselves. That's because our agreements are actually like a strong addiction. We're addicted to being the way we are. We're addicted to anger, jealousy, and self-pity. We are addicted to the belief that tells us, I'm not good enough, I'm not intelligent enough, why even try? Other people will do it because they're better than me. And I think when we talk about this and we talk about relevance to executive functions and individuals that struggle with executive functions, I think that I oftentimes, when I go into working with a new client, the initial couple of sessions is all about talking about the old existing structures and behaviors that they have within their lives and how those dictate behaviors and habits that affect their progression and their goals and their ambitions and their dreams. And a lot of times what we have to do is we have to start breaking down these old structures that they have. But as we're breaking them down, I have to allow my clients to really understand, okay, well, this structure doesn't work because of X, Y, and Z. But they have to come to that realization themselves. And once they do, then we have to brainstorm together as a team on what structure needs to be replaced in there that is going to work for them now for that situation. And I think it's really important that when we're creating new structures in life, creating new habits, new agreements in life, that whoever is making those new agreements, they're the ones doing it themselves, that they have full control over the things that they are agreeing to. And the reason for that is because these new structures are the saving grace for a lot of my clients, and they have to believe that this is the saving grace for them. They have to believe that this structure and these strategies are going to work. So when it comes to approaching agreement by agreement or structures by structures or habits by habits, we have to do it in a way where we're replacing it with something new, something better, something different that we can try to see if it's going to work. So that's what Ruiz's first solution is. Now let's go ahead and jump into the second one. Okay, so the second solution by Don Miguel Ruiz for breaking old habits is entitled The Discipline of the Warrior, Controlling Your Own Behavior. So when I think about our emotions, right, because this is really talking about the discipline of a warrior is the ability to be resilient and aware enough of our emotions to recognize when we are supposed to feel things and when we should save the feelings for later. When is it appropriate to have an emotional time, a sensitive time, versus when it's not appropriate to be sensitive or emotional? And I think about this in relationships to executive functions, and I think about the idea of emotional control. Emotional control is our ability to recognize if it is the time and the place to exhibit a certain emotion. And our ability to control that is so critical. And I think about emotions, I think about how our emotions are kind of like a double-edged sword, where, our emotions can be so positive, where we could set a small goal, and a simple goal of just, after I drink tea, I'm going to wash the cup, dry it, and put it in the cupboard. And even though that this is such a small goal, it's still a goal. And it's a goal that helps me feel like I am beginning to be more capable of being clean in my own house. If you ever come to my house, you'll actually realize that there's cups everywhere. So actually taking the cup and washing it, drying it up and putting it in the cupboard is actually a huge feat. And such a small thing to others, and such a small thing that we will say to ourselves, because a lot of times when we set a small goal, we end up saying to ourselves, this is no big deal. What's the big deal of washing a cup and putting in the cupboard and, doing that every single time? Well, that is just one step that opens up the dopamine pathways in our brain, even though it might be a small dopamine pathway, of starting to feel better about ourselves and better about our progress towards bigger organizational goals like vacuuming every week or something, right? But emotions at the same time could be so negative, right? We can wake up, feel like we're on the top of the world, and we can go talk to a significant other that we love and trust, and they can say something, and they're not even cognizant of it. They can say something that opens up an old wound, a wound that's filled with so much emotional toxins that we're incapable and paralyzed to continue with the rest of the day without, going for a long walk or grabbing a beer or smoking a joint, whatever it is, right? And that could lead to a week of no progress. It could lead to a month of no progress. And, that's the power that our emotions have over us. And I think, Ruiz talks about the importance of awareness and how awareness and being aware of why we're angry or why the emotions are getting to us so much and forgiving the source of that anger and frustration is so important. So let me go and read to you this quote on page 114. If we can see our state of mind as a disease, we find that there is a cure. We don't have to suffer any longer. First, we need the truth to open the emotional wounds, take the poison out, and heal the wounds completely. How do we do this? We must forgive those who we feel have wronged us, not because they deserve to be forgiven, but because we love ourselves so much we don't want to keep paying for the injustice. If you think about it, when we feel such intense emotions that lead to unproductivity or a lack of progress to our goals or giving up on our goals, it's usually tied to a memory, an agreement that we've had that was established by somebody that we really trusted that turned sour. And the goal of having the mind or the mentality of a warrior is so that there's enough resilience, enough awareness to recognize that it's no longer the time and place to be angry anymore. It's no longer the time and place to be frustrated anymore. It's the time and place to forgive. Forgiveness is no sign of weakness. Forgiveness is actually a sign of great strength because it takes a lot more willpower to forgive and move on than to wallow in the sorrows of your frustration, your anger. I think we could all kind of agree to that, is that like when we're so angry at something or so frustrated with something, it's actually so much harder to recognize that, hey, I need to process this, and after I'm done processing it, I need to let it go. It's so hard to do that. It's sometimes quite literally impossible to do that, especially for a lot of my clients that have emotional control challenges. And I think what I end up doing with them a lot of the times is we do a lot of really deep reflective journaling where we pinpoint each of the past agreements that are negative, that cause them to have a negative perspective of themselves. And it could be, something that they learned in school or at home, like whatever it is. And we talk about the structural components of those agreements. How valid and realistic is the agreement that you're incapable of taking a shower every day? How valid is the agreement that you should not be a mother because you're not even able to take care of yourself? Really talking about the structure of certain agreements that we have with ourselves and understanding how to reapproach those. Reconcile the emotional grief that we have with those agreements, letting it go, and coming up with a new structure to put in place so that we feel better about it. Maybe if I feel like I'm not ready to be a father, I have to really ask myself why. Why is that the case? Go through pros and cons. Maybe, adopt a nephew and try it out, which is something that I actually did, but it wasn't because of trying it out. But regardless of that specific tangent of mine, when we are able to address specific emotions that we have, forgive, let go, and move forward, we begin to be more resilient to new emotions that might come up. And when those emotions come up and they open up new wounds that previously probably would have paralyzed and crippled us for a couple of days, we become more ready to do the same thing, right? Repetition makes perfection. When we repeatedly become more resilient to emotional harm, we're able to tackle it, process it, forgive and let go, and move on. And I think that is the key to the mindset of a warrior that Ruiz is talking about, is to be able to forgive, let go, and move on. That's so critical. I hope you guys like that. Let's move on to the very last solution that Ruiz talks about. Okay, so the last solution that Ruiz offers is entitled The Initiation of the Dead, Embracing the Angel of Death. And I want to be honest, right? When we first hear the idea of embracing the angel of death, that seems very ominous. But I think Ruiz brings up something that I think is very, very powerful here. And even Ruiz himself admits that this specific solution is terribly hard, terribly challenging. And I want to make sense of why it's so challenging. So he talks about on page 121 at the very bottom that if we surrender to the angel of death, we will be happy forever and ever. Why? Because the angel of death takes the past away in order to make it possible for life to continue. And I think I really want to dissect this, because when I was reading it and I was really trying to think about what Ruiz was talking about, it didn't really make a lot of sense to me until I did my brainstorm of what I was going to talk about for this specific book chat. And, I think what Ruiz is talking about is that once we have enough experience in life and we have enough wisdom behind us through that experience, we're able to recognize and learn from our past mistakes, our past agreements, good or bad. And we're able to say that these agreements are bad, but they're in the past. And the past does not affect the now and the future. And I think that's the critical point, is that so much of anxiety or fear or dread or even depression is fixated on the past. This happened in the past, so therefore it dictates the now and the future. However, if we really use, I don't want to say we really use our brains, but if we really process that idea and that thought, is that our past has no dictation of how we choose. And the key point is choose. How we choose to live our present and our future. And I think that's kind of what Ruiz is talking about. And I think there was an old saying, I think it's probably still going on, a couple years ago, of YOLO. You only live once. I think Ruiz is really trying to take that saying and make it make more sense. Is that if we are willing to fully let go of our past agreements that are haunting us, the past mistakes that haunt us, the past wounds that have so much emotional poison and toxin in them, if we're willing to fully let go and just live our lives and choose to live our lives based on the now and the future, then we can abide by the 4 agreements and live life fully loving ourselves and loving others, accepting others, and accepting ourselves, so that we can live a happy and fulfilling life of the dream that isn't of the planet, but the dream that is of ours. And I think that's his whole spiel of what this last agreement is. I think it's super powerful. Well, not this last agreement, but this last solution is. I think it's super powerful, but it took me a while to really understand it. I hope what I said kind of made sense. That's it for today. If you guys liked what I talked about, please like and subscribe to our channel, to this video. Comment down below. Your support means the world to me and my team. And whenever I see a comment, I am super happy because I know we are just starting on our video creating journey, but that just means the early supporters really appreciate you all. All right, talk to you guys soon. Talk to you guys probably next week. All right, bye.